So, I've covered a lot of people on this channel so far. That's all fine and good, but I have yet to answer the trillion Reichsmark question that is on everyone's mind. How would they rank as professional wrestlers? This is a tier list video. Being creative is for pussies, after all. This video was very much inspired by this post, so obviously I need to blatantly steal the idea because I thought it would be fun. Anyways, this is what my final tier list looked like. Now, I know a whole lot of fuck all about wrestling other than it's really fun to watch, so my opinion is based entirely on that fact. You are most definitely going to disagree with me. And that is 100% okay, because intelligent debate and discussion is healthy for you. Firstly, for those of you who haven't watched it before, I'll quickly go over some terminology. These mostly relate to how people get classified from a business and storytelling sense. First are faces and heels. A face is, quite literally, a face of the franchise. They're on all the promotional stuff, all the cover art, and they are usually involved in the most matches. They are often the good guy that they want people to root for. Heels are the opposite. They are the villains. Their entire job is to piss you off, and make you keep watching exclusively so you don't miss someone kicking their ass. A turn is when a wrestler goes from a heel to a face, or vice versa. The card is basically where they stand in the roster and how much they get pushed, i.e. top cards are the most popular, mid card are mid, etc. The rest are pretty self-explanatory. Managers manage, promoters promote, and gimmicks are the person's shtick. Finally, for everyone on this list, assume they are being taken at their peak physical prime, just so we have a point to go off of. Got that? Alright, let's go. We'll begin where it began, with Santos Dumont, actually. Yeah, remember him? Only OGs remember him. Don't watch this video, it's terrible. But it technically was the first biography I did, so he gets included. Off the bat, he is an interesting figure. He by all accounts was a very intelligent guy, and his pioneering of powered flight gives him almost Daredevil vibes. Coupled with the fact that he grew up on a farm means he would actually be pretty well rounded. The main issue is the fact that he suffered from multiple sclerosis, and his health went to shit pretty quickly after 1910, which would shorten his career immensely. I'd be willing to put him in C tier. Next up is good old Francis Gamer Yockey. The fact that I owe basically my whole channel to a Nazi is kinda funny, but that's whatever. Yockey is interesting because, in my opinion, as an actual wrestler, he wouldn't be all that special. He was smart and crazy, which is a good combo, and has drive and willpower that would get him far. However, he was definitely lacking a little on the physical side, and him dying at the age of only 42 would cut his career very short. What he lacks in in-ring ability, however, I feel would be counterbalanced by his ability to promote. Honestly, as far as promoters go, he probably would be one of the best on this list, simply for his impossible pragmatism and his unorthodox views and the way he presented them. I think a lower C would work for him. Jay Lovestone was a communist, so obviously his score goes down for that reason alone. However, his career was marked by a very interesting turn, with him being recruited by the CIA and becoming wildly anti-communist. Depending on your personal opinions, this could be either a face or a heel turn, and I think that kind of thematic depth would really make him a likable and controversial figure. While his wrestling skills would likely have been somewhat middling, I feel like he would have one of the all-time great story arcs that would really resonate with fans. For this reason, I'll put him in the high C tier, if not low B. Dmitry Yazov will start a trend of people who have been in the military scoring much higher simply for that reason. The physical and mental requirements to make a military career work say a lot about an individual's character, and these will definitely translate to the ring. Yazov exemplifies this, I believe. Marshal of the Soviet Union with 50 years of military experience would make someone an absolute menace. Coupled with his obvious heel potential, given his track record during the fall of the Soviet Union, and he earns a spot in B tier in my opinion. George Lincoln Rockwell. Honestly, as much as I despise his politics, I do believe that he would be very good in the world of professional wrestling. He would be kinda like Yazov on crack. He served in the Navy, so he was physically fit, but that's not even the big draw for him. He would be a legendary heel. Like, the kind that would make you genuinely despise the man. His vocality and radicalism means he would easily hold his own during promotions or just getting heated, and there have been Nazi-themed wrestlers in the past, so it wouldn't be unheard of. That said, I can't imagine him having a long run, being, you know, a fucking Nazi and all, and he would be extremely controversial, which does detract from his marketability. I think a high B tier would be fitting. Arkin would absolutely be a personality-oriented wrestler. Criminal, war criminal, purveyor of extravagance, really, he has it all set up. Not only that, but he was really good at playing shit for the cameras and loved the media attention. You gotta remember, half of wrestling is pretty much acting, and it takes a certain kind of person to nail that aspect. His experience in his criminal and military lives would also lend good credibility to his in-ring skills. B tier, moving on. Ferdinand Shono would be another good example of military experience being a benefit. Fighting in both world wars and making the rank of field marshal, in a straight-up fight he would be able to back up words with actions. However, he has the issue of honestly being dull as dishwater. He was very much a I do this shit because I was told to person until very late in the war, and I feel like this would translate translate to a similar in-ring mindset. He would be popular with some, but mass appeal and marketability would likely be less common. However, the stage name Bloody Ferdinand is fucking awesome, and he gets to make B tier just for that. Remmer is a sort of poor man's Rockwell. They both served in the military, they were both comically racist, and they were both very vocal about being Nazis even after the Nazis got their asses beat. That being said, Rockwell is just so much more recognizable, and in my opinion has a more interesting backstory. Military experience still counts though, so I'll put him in C tier. Albert Gehring, with all due respect, wouldn't be a great wrestler. I do not mean anything bad by this, it's just he is rather incompatible with the role. He's always described as quiet and reserved, and most likely just wanted to vibe. He was undoubtedly a good person and helped a lot of people at great risk, but if you just don't want to do something, then you probably aren't going to do too well. Of course, his greatest asset is his name, and it could set up some interesting storylines with his brother, but that isn't a huge game changer. He gets D tier. Lot is up next. Fuck, I have covered a lot of military guys, eh? Anyways, Lot is a lot like Yazov, but as a face instead of a heel. He radiates based good guy energy, and unlike a lot of forced good guys, he would actually be able to pull it off because he was just an actually good guy. He strikes me as the type to end the reign of a prominent heel in some ridiculous match that will make everyone go crazy. He would also be one to help up-and-comer wrestlers, I imagine, as well, and overall the industry as a whole would just be better with him around. Lastly, as established, military experience equals good. A tier. Dörlewanger would suck. Plain and simple. He could make it as a gimmick wrestler, but as someone who spent his entire army career brutalizing people who could hardly fight back, the unrepentant asshole image would get old very quickly. His violent streak would also make him very few friends in the locker room, and I can't see him lasting very long. Doesn't matter how well you can beat somebody up if nobody wants to watch it or participate in it. F tier. Tabaritsky would also be on the lower end of the spectrum. The fact that much of his early life, including his military service, is ambiguous because he kept changing his story to get German citizenship, doesn't give an accurate judgment of physical ability. Furthermore, he very much was a pencil pusher for most of his time in Germany, and he seemed content in this spot. He scores some points for being pretty iconic though, so he still gets a spot in the higher D tier. Pele would be an interesting gimmick wrestler. His very strange Christian but not really ideology gives him opportunities to have wacky and batshit insane plot lines. He's crazy enough to be very funny and watchable, but just sane enough to be actually competent. His lack of a formal higher education is made up for by his skill as a writer, but he is still held back by limited physical experience, military or otherwise. Regardless, he would definitely be along the lines of a less over-the-top Rockwell, but honestly, other than the character factor, I don't see him being higher than C tier. Werbel and Muller are in a similar boat. Both are mercenaries with ridiculous track records of helping people find out when they fuck around. Both of them embraced conflict, blood, and gold wholeheartedly, and both of them gained infamy for these reasons. Honestly, I'ma just say it, they are a tag team in my headcanon, and nothing you say will change that. Skill in the world will definitely translate to skill in the ring, and their colorful personalities will make them hits with fans. Both get A tier as a duo. Saiblin is a pretty funny guy. On the surface, he's the perfect face, a noble reformer who valiantly gave his life to save the nation he loved. Underneath, however, he is a bit more complex, as it has been pointed out that he has very much had Stalinist leanings, which opens him for a heel turn in his storyline. Slight problem, he fucking died at 37, making him someone who's a case of gone too soon. As a result, his career would be short and memorable, but his long-term impacts would possibly be minimal. He still did have skills to join the Navy and become a commissar, so I'll still give him a low B tier. Consejero is somewhat similar to Albert, i.e. not someone with a good mindset for the business. Consejero was not a fan of conflict, and he hated that the War of Canudos even happened. I highly doubt someone like that would be willing to wrestle, even if the violence was scripted. He falls even lower though, as apart from his intelligence and charisma, he's never stated as being an extremely physically able individual. Unfortunately, he gets put in F tier. Pendergast would be a fantastic manager. He would suffer in the ring due to his persistent addictions and recurring illnesses, however, you can't deny that this guy was a very good organizer. Running Kansas City like a king for years takes careful and effective politicking. If there's anyone who would know their way around the wrestling business, it would absolutely be him. This would let him narrowly enter C tier, I think. Michael de Reiter, I think, would actually be pretty solid. You don't serve in the Navy in the fucking 1600s for that long without being built different. He was a brilliant commander, excelled at fucking up the English, and is only really held back by the very different physical standards of the time. I'd be down to give him B tier. Pavlich is getting D tier. I'm sure he was fine, but his mismanagement of the independent state of Croatia and his brutal genocide stain his image considerably. I can only really see him being popular with a small group of contrarians and assholes, and in the ring he would be nothing special. I do think a match between him and Arkin would be base as fuck though. We just need Hussein Gradashevic to represent Bosnia and Mustafa Kemal Ataturk to represent Turkey, and we have possibly the greatest fatal four-way match of all time. Norris, as stated in his video, was a peak physical specimen. A decade of farm labor will do that to a person. Not only that, but he was a skilled politician and one who had conviction and willingness to stand up for his beliefs, which gives him plenty of collision course potential with some of the more radical people on this list. He would be an excellent staple character, one who might not get as much attention as the big faces and heels, but his presence would still very much be felt. Easy A tier. Lastly, Strom Thurmond would also be A tier. During his college days, he was a sports guy, which I didn't mention in his main video. His ridiculous longevity also points to his health actually being pretty good, and the man straight up has a fucking gym named after him. Much like Norris in his prime, peak specimen. Interestingly, he would also serve as a perfect antagonist to Norris, and the two would play off each other in a beef extremely well. As a politician, his crowd work would also naturally be great, and overall, regardless of his political opinions, he would definitely be one of the all-time greats. A tier. What was the point of all this? I don't know. Happy April, dipshits. And that about does it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.